statistics, which show that at Columbia High School, which is 56% black, 72%, 72 to 74% of all students in AP Math are white, and only 14% are black. The same thing in AP Science. So you can talk about this one student, but then what about everybody else? And so, it's a systemic issue that this Washington Post reporter, who, by the way, is considered to be one of the best education writers in journalism in the country, who immediately identified with what was going on in South Orange and Maplewood and agreed with my proposition that the district was unnecessarily restricting access to these advanced level courses and trying to create the impression that they had this high-level academic program by excluding a number of students who could probably do well in these courses. Last night I was on the phone for an hour with a Columbia High School alumna, black female, who read the article in the Washington Post. She lives in Washington. And she said she was in tears because she said that was me when I was at Columbia, because she was kept out of AP Calculus until her mom fought for her. Well, guess what? This young woman today is a civil engineer. She holds 2 engineering degrees, a master's degree in urban planning. She's a co-partner in an engineering firm in Washington, D.C. And her sister, who faces a similar problem, is a medical doctor in Pittsburgh. This is what's been happening to our black children. So you have these bright black kids who, unless someone goes in there and fights like hell for them, they're being relegated to these lower level classes. And it's time that we put an end to this practice, particularly not only as black parents, but as black taxpayers. We shouldn't be paying for a school system that's discriminating against our children.
No, Walter, the thing I'm trying to understand with the new organization that was formed, what is the main purpose of the new organization, the South Orange Maplewood Black Parents of African Descent Workshop? What is the mission and the main purpose of that organization?
The main purpose of the organization is to work towards educational equity in the South Orange Maplewood School District, meaning to make sure that black students have full access to the full range of academic opportunities throughout the entire school system, from K through 5 through high school. And that's simply the purpose. We have a school district that has recently decided to be one of the 10 worst in the state for the segregation of special needs students by race. The ACLU have identified the South Orange Maplewood School District as one of the school districts in New Jersey that employs discriminatory tactics in their student enrollment procedures that primarily harm immigrants. And so in South Orange Maplewood, that's a large Haitian population. So we have a school district that has some deep-seated issues, and we can either talk around it, we can ignore it, we can deny it, we can make excuses for it, but I choose to correct it. And so what this organization is set out to do is to use whatever means is necessary to reform our school district.
No, Walter. Some people may say that one of the reasons why the kids of color are doing bad at the high school is because many of the parents are not involved. What do you say to that?
Many white parents are involved. So that doesn't, explain this huge disparity that we have in access to these courses. It doesn't explain the disparity in disciplining of students that we have in our school system. I think that's another cheap excuse that's being used to cover up what has been a long-standing problem in this school district. And mind you, it's not just this school district. Just today in the Record newspaper, there's a huge article about Montclair and the fact that the Civil Rights Commission and the community of Montclair would like to meet with the school board there about the exact same issues we're raising in South Orange, Maplewood. What hasn't happened is a real focused look at what is happening to black children in suburbs. We spent a lot of time talking about black children, and understandably so, in places like Newark and Patterson and large cities. But what's gone undetected is this sort of low-grade racism that exists in many suburban communities. and the bias that exists in many suburban communities. I could care less about the reputation of these two communities. I could care less about any folks that we're diverse, because it means nothing if you have these disparities in your community. So for everyone who claims and stands at the meeting and talks about how proud they are to live in South Orange, Maplewood, now is the time to step forward and say, we should not have these types of disparities, and we should be embarrassed to have these types of disparities, and we should live up to the reputation that we claim to have as two diverse, inclusive communities. So, it's like put up or shut up time, in my estimation.
No, Walter, in the article by Jay Matthews, he compared Columbia High School to Blake High School in Montgomery County. And the superintendent also seemed, according to the article, the superintendent seemed to be interested in the school becoming more like Blake, where Blake is more of an open, the school is open, AP classes are open to all students. And he stated that we recognize the need to encourage all students who want to work hard to take AP classes. Do you think, is that something that the superintendent was just saying because it sounds good? Or do you truly believe that is something going to actually happen here in South Orange and Maplewood?
Well, I would hope that because he's on the record, he wouldn't just say something that sounds good. I think the superintendent, in a very stark moment of truth, has acknowledged that our district has some real issues. I've never heard him go on record like this before. The fact of the matter is, Blake High School is in Silver Spring, Maryland, which is a community like South Orange and Maplewood. Blake High School's demographics are identical to Columbia High School, but they have a higher success rate of moving black students into AP, taking AP classes, and passing the AP test because they have open enrollment. They also have a STEM academy, science, technology, engineering, and math, that they encourage students to go into these classes. So for the superintendent to publicly state, he said a lot in his quote. He said, number one, we do have barriers that we shouldn't have. He said we need to encourage students more. He also said, yes, our pass rate on AP exams is probably artificially high because we're excluding so many people. Blake High School's rate is like 65%. Columbia is 85%, which shows you right there, if you know anything about the AP test, that is a false number. And then he said, yes, open enrollment is one of the things under serious consideration. So for everyone who wants to read this Washington Post article and put blinders on and make excuses, they need to read the superintendent's quote, because obviously he knows this is a problem. But some people in our community are in denial. So I just find it very interesting that the superintendent would go on record to say that, but you still have people who want to make all these other excuses. It just goes to show you that no matter what the economic profile of a community is, ignorance can still win.
And I kind of, I'm not a Maplewood Online person, because I'm just not a Maplewood Online person, but I go there to read different comments for different topics. And throughout all the comments that I've read, I rarely read anything regarding the superintendent comments. There wasn't any sort of discussion that the superintendent made these statements. And I think the statements by the superintendent is something that's very important. But it just, Walter, it's just difficult when these are some of the same parents that everyone have to send their kids to school with. If they could write these type of things on Maplewood Online, what are they telling their kids when they're in that house?
Oh, without a doubt. But see, I think we also should not be living in these two communities under the false impression that we live in inclusive communities. And I think too many of us have fallen into the trap in believing that somehow or another, once you enter into these two towns, you don't have some of the virulent racism that you have in other parts of the country. We do. New Jersey is always cited as one of the states with the most segregated public school systems in the nation. We always fall in one of the top three slots. This year, New York was number one. I think New Jersey was number three. We live in a state that has some really challenging race relations and have a history of racism. So to think that South Orange and Maplewood is so different, I think we're fooling ourselves. And I think the problem is when we don't speak directly about these issues. And I think too many black residents of our two communities have been too silent for too long because they have been satisfied with living in these communities and not necessarily working to make these communities to be what they claim they want to be.
You know, Walter, and I know you got to run. There's something that always amazed me at Columbia High School, even when I look at the statistics. And as a matter of fact, I looked at the New Jersey Department of Education report for the NJ Ask, and they talk about advanced proficient, proficient, and partially proficient. And when you look at the numbers in the elementary school and you go grade 3, 4, 5, and then you go to the middle school in grade 5, 6, 7, and 8, in language arts, in science, and in math, partially proficient in the elementary schools, it's like over 30% of the kids of color. And economically disadvantaged kids is nearly 50%. And you go in the third grade, the fourth grade, and the fifth grade, and when you go to the middle school, it's nearly the same. And you very rarely hear this type of discussion happening in the community. You know, and I think that's kind of sad. And then when you go over to Columbia High School and you see the leveling, and you see the makeups of the level. I mean, I can talk about that because my son went through Columbia High School. You know, and at one point, a teacher wanted to demote him from level 4 to level 3. And I wouldn't stand for it. And I went to the principal, and they kept him in level 4, and he continued to excel. It just so happened that we had enough of Columbia, and we sent him to a boarding school. So some people want to close their eyes and not look at these numbers. But it's about time. And you know something? We always tout how diverse we are in South Orange and Maplewood. We are a very diverse community. But I always wonder if we are just diverse in certain things and not in other things.
Well, I think we are diverse in population. And I think we take that diversity and use it as a facade to cover up these deep-seated issues. And so rather than confront them and try to work to really create a community that is truly diverse and truly diverse in terms of educational outcomes, that all of our children are excelling, we have people who would rather stick their heads in the sand and who may talk publicly about diversity, but behind closed doors or behind a computer screen are saying something else. So I always find these incidents to be very empowering, because I think the truth is empowering. And whether or not it gets ugly really doesn't matter to me. I'm not, I don't pay any attention to anything that's said online. My goal, I have a focus, and the focus is educational equity. We will fight to the end to make sure that our school district is educating all of our children and is making sure that black children, who will soon comprise the majority of the South Orange Maplewood School District, that black children are receiving a first-rate quality education.
And there's two quotes that I always use on this program here by Martin Luther King Jr. The first quote said, "Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. And never be afraid to do what's right, especially if the well-being of a person or animal is at stake. Society's punishment are small compared to the wounds we inflict on our soul when we look the other way." And I believe sometime in this community there are things happening, and we have been looking the other way for a long time. And I think if there are, for example, when the Community Coalition on Race started, I mean, we had so much steering going on in South Orange and Maplewood, and they made a significant difference. By the way, Walter, where's the Community Coalition on what's going on here in South Orange and Maplewood regarding education?
I don't know. I had someone reach out to me who was a good friend asking to participate on one of their committees, and I respectfully declined, just because it's been my sense that there hasn't been much movement in these two communities on any of these issues while this organization existed.